It was not worth risking someone else's life.
In the perilous embrace of Mount Everest, where dreams and dangers intertwine, one man's fateful journey unfolded.
But as you're about to hear, it could all have been so much worse had it not been for the heroism of one Australian.
Beck Weathers, an unlikely survivor, found himself at the heart of the 1996 Everest tragedy.
There was nothing to hurt because all the parts that were exposed were dead.
This is a tale of human endurance against the mightiest of mountains. The lure of Everest. Mount Everest, a behemoth that pierces the heavens, has long stood as a symbol of the ultimate challenge in the mountaineering world. Its allure is a complex tapestry of human ambition, historical significance, and the raw, untamed beauty of nature at its most formidable. For climbers like Beck Weathers, the draw of Everest was not just a call to adventure, but a siren song of pushing human limits in the face of the extraordinary. The history of Everest is steeped in legends and milestones. It was in 1953 that Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay first set foot on its summit, marking a momentous event in human exploration. This achievement did not just rewrite what was possible for mankind. It ignited a flame in the hearts of climbers worldwide. The mountain, standing tall at 29,029 feet, represents the zenith of earthly heights, a literal peak experience for anyone daring enough to face its trials. For many, Everest is more than just a mountain. It's a living entity, commanding respect and awe. The journey to its summit passes through a landscape that is both breathtakingly beautiful and brutally unforgiving. Climbers traverse through the treacherous Khumbu icefall, negotiate the western Siduem's vast glacial valley, and face the deadly altitude and weather conditions of the South Col and the Southeast Ridge. This route is not just a path through snow and rock. It's a pilgrimage through a gauntlet of natural extremes. The challenge of Everest goes far beyond physical prowess. It tests mental fortitude, resilience, and the human spirit. The mountain has its own set of rules, governed by unpredictable weather, the thin air of high altitudes, and the sheer unpredictability of nature itself. For those like Beck Weathers, who dare to tread these paths, Everest presents the ultimate test of survival against the elements. But Everest's allure is not just about personal achievement. It's steeped in a rich narrative of human struggle, triumph, and sometimes tragedy. Each climber who embarks on this journey carries with them not just their gear, but the weight of history and the legacy of those who came before. The mountain has been witness to countless stories of heroism, perseverance, and the unyielding human desire to reach for the stars, or in this case, the highest point on Earth. However, this allure is not without its dark side. The mountain has claimed many lives, serving as a solemn reminder of nature's unbridled power. The thin line between achieving glory and facing doom is starkly evident here, more than anywhere else. For every story of triumph, there are tales of loss and despair, echoing the mountain's unpredictable nature. Beck Weathers' journey to Everest was a testament to this magnetic pull. Like many before him, he was drawn not just by the challenge of the climb, but by the chance to etch his name in the annals of Everest's history. His quest was more than a pursuit of a mountaineer's dream. It was a venture into a realm where few dare to tread, a realm that promised glory at the risk of grave peril. The 1996 expedition that Weathers joined was one of the many that Everest has seen over the years. Each climber in the group brought their own aspirations, hopes, and fears to the mountain. Together, they embarked on a journey that would test their limits and write a new chapter in the storied history of Everest. Beck Weathers, the man behind the survival. Beck Weathers' journey to the top of the world was as unlikely as it was harrowing. A pathologist from Texas, Weathers did not fit the mold of the stereotypical mountaineer. His foray into the world of high-altitude climbing stemmed not from a lifetime of alpine pursuit, but from a deeper, more personal battle. Beck's story is one of transformation, driven by a quest to conquer inner demons as much as the world's highest peak. Born in 1946, Weathers grew up with an innate love for the outdoors, but it wasn't until his adulthood that he found his true calling in the mountains. The turning point came in his 30s when he was grappling with a deep sense of personal dissatisfaction and depression. Climbing, for Weathers, became a way to transcend his struggles, a physical manifestation of fighting against the gravity of his own life challenges. Each ascent was a step away from his inner turmoil, a step towards a sense of achievement and self-worth. Weathers' journey into mountaineering started modestly. He began with smaller climbs, gradually building his skills and confidence. He was not a natural athlete, but he had determination in spades. Over time, his passion for climbing evolved into a goal that seemed almost insurmountable: to summit the highest peak on each of the 7 continents, a challenge known in mountaineering circles as the 7 Summits. Everest, the highest and most daunting of them all, was the pinnacle of this challenge. The preparation for an Everest expedition is as mental as it is physical. For Weathers, this meant balancing his demanding career and family life with rigorous training. His regime was intense and all-consuming: long-distance running, strength training, and acclimatizing himself to high altitudes. He knew that Everest would test him to his limits, not just in terms of physical endurance, but also mental resilience. The mountain's infamous weather, the thin air at high altitude, and the sheer length of the expedition required a level of preparedness that went beyond the physical. His motivation for climbing Everest was complex. It was more than the thrill of adventure or the allure of the summit. For Weathers, each climb was a battle against his own limitations, a chance to prove to himself that he could overcome the insurmountable. His drive was rooted in a profound need to find meaning and purpose, to feel alive in the face of life's challenges. As he prepared for the 1996 expedition, Weathers was acutely aware of the risks. Everest was notorious not just for its height, but for the treacherous conditions that awaited climbers. The mountain had claimed many lives, a sobering reminder of the fine line between triumph and tragedy in high-altitude climbing. Yet the call of Everest was irresistible. It represented the ultimate test of his will, a chance to stand on top of the world and, in doing so, to conquer his innermost fears. Weathers joined the expedition led by Rob Hall, a renowned mountaineer with extensive experience on Everest. The team was a mix of seasoned climbers and relative novices, all united by the common goal of reaching the summit. For Weathers, being part of this team was both an honor and a challenge. He knew he would be pushing his limits, but he also knew that he wouldn't be alone in this endeavor. As the expedition approached, Weathers' training intensified. He spent countless hours conditioning his body and mind for the challenges ahead. He knew that the key to success on Everest was not just physical strength, but the ability to make critical decisions under extreme stress. The mountain demanded respect, and Weathers was determined to meet it on its terms. The 1996 Everest expedition, a dream turns grim. The 1996 Everest expedition embarked with the hopes and dreams of its climbers etched against the backdrop of the world's highest peak. Led by the experienced New Zealander Rob Hall, the team was an eclectic mix of seasoned climbers and affluent enthusiasts, including Beck Weathers. Each member carried a personal quest for glory, unaware of the impending disaster that would turn their dream into one of the most harrowing tales in mountaineering history. The journey began with the trek to Everest Base Camp, a grueling but essential acclimatization phase. Base Camp, at an altitude of 17,600 feet, was not just a physical location, but a mental gateway, marking the transition from the known world to the alien landscape of high-altitude mountaineering. Here, amidst the stark beauty of the Himalayas, the climbers prepared for the daunting task ahead, acclimating their bodies to the thinning air and bonding as a team. The initial ascent was a test of endurance. The route to Camp 1 involved navigating the perilous Khumbu icefall, a maze of crevasses and unstable ice towers. Despite the dangers, the team progressed steadily, buoyed by the excitement of the climb and the camaraderie among the climbers. Weathers, despite being less experienced than some of his teammates, showed remarkable fortitude, driven by his deep personal resolve. As the expedition moved higher, the challenges mounted. The journey from Camp 1 to Camp 2, and then to Camp 3, was a relentless battle against the mountain's harsh conditions. With each step, the air grew thinner, the temperatures colder, and the physical toll more evident. Weathers and his companions faced the brutal reality of high-altitude climbing, extreme fatigue, potential for acute mountain sickness, and the ever-present danger of avalanches and sudden weather changes. The team's strategy was to make a series of rotations between the camps to acclimatize before the final push to the summit. This approach, standard in high-altitude mountaineering, was physically and mentally draining. It required descending to lower altitudes to recover before climbing higher again, a process that tested the climbers' endurance and willpower. As they approached the summit bid, the team was cautiously optimistic. The weather, a critical factor in any Everest expedition, had been relatively favorable. However, the mountain had a reputation for rapid and deadly weather changes, a fact that weighed heavily on the climbers and their leader, Rob Hall. The summit push began under uncertain weather conditions. The climbers left Camp 4, the final camp before the summit, in the early hours of the morning, aiming to reach the summit and return before the afternoon, when the weather on Everest often deteriorates. The ascent was slow, hindered by the altitude and the sheer physical exhaustion of the climbers. Disaster struck as they neared the summit. A fierce blizzard engulfed the mountain, reducing visibility to zero and transforming the already treacherous landscape into a deadly maze. The climbers, spread out along the southeast ridge, were caught in one of the worst storms ever recorded on Everest. Weathers, already struggling with his vision due to the high altitude, found himself in a desperate situation. The blizzard's ferocity made it impossible to continue or to turn back. Disoriented and battling the extreme cold, the climbers were pushed to their limits. The dream of conquering Everest was quickly turning into a nightmare of survival. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Communication between the climbers and the team leaders became nearly impossible. The climbers were faced with life-threatening decisions: to seek shelter and wait out the storm or to attempt a perilous descent in near-zero visibility. Back at base camp, the support teams could only wait anxiously. The blizzard made any rescue attempt treacherous and unlikely. The climbers on the mountain were, in many ways, on their own, battling against the elements for survival. The 1996 Everest disaster unfolded over the next 48 hours. The storm claimed the lives of 8 climbers from various expeditions, making it one of the deadliest days in the mountain's history. Among the survivors was Beck Weathers, who had endured unimaginable hardships. Survival against all odds. Beck Weathers' ordeal on Everest was a stark testament to human resilience. As the blizzard raged, he found himself in a precarious situation that would challenge his very will to live. The storm, which had blindsided the climbers during their summit push, transformed the mountain into an unforgiving, frozen hellscape. For Weathers, the struggle was not just against the storm, but also against his sudden blindness and profound isolation. The altitude had taken a severe toll on Weathers' eyesight, a condition known as high-altitude retinopathy. The lack of oxygen and extreme cold caused his corneas to freeze, leaving him effectively blind in the midst of one of the deadliest storms in Everest's history. Stranded high on the South Col, with visibility near zero and temperatures plummeting, Weathers faced an unimaginable crisis. The situation was dire. The blizzard made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead, and the howling wind drowned out any calls for help. Weathers, isolated and disoriented, could do little but hunker down and hope for the storm to abate. His situation was compounded by the thin air at over 26,000 feet, the infamous death zone, where the human body cannot acclimatize and deteriorates rapidly. As hours passed, the severity of Weathers' condition became apparent. The relentless cold began to take its toll, with the risk of frostbite and hypothermia ever present. In these extreme conditions, the human body is pushed to its limits, and survival becomes a battle against time. Weathers, with his impaired vision and increasing exposure to the elements, was in a race against the clock. In a twist of fate, a brief lull in the storm allowed a few climbers to discover Weathers. They found him semi-conscious, frostbitten, and in desperate need of help. However, the harsh reality of high-altitude mountaineering soon became evident. In the death zone, every climber is on the edge of survival, and the ability to assist others is often limited. Despite their best efforts, the team was unable to transport Weathers back to Camp 4. With a heavy heart, they made the excruciating decision to leave him, believing his survival chances were negligible. Left alone on the mountain, Weathers lay exposed to the brutal elements. The night that followed was a testament to his extraordinary will to live. In the face of overwhelming odds, something remarkable happened. Weathers, driven by thoughts of his family and a deep-rooted survival instinct, found the strength to move. In an incredible display of resilience, he began a slow, agonizing crawl towards Camp 4. This journey was more than a physical struggle. It was a fight for life itself. Weathers, with his vision impaired and body ravaged by the cold, navigated through the storm by sheer instinct and determination. Each movement was a battle against the mountain's relentless fury. His progress was painstakingly slow, but driven by an unyielding desire to survive, he continued. The arrival at Camp 4 was nothing short of miraculous. The camp, a temporary safe haven in the midst of the storm, offered a glimmer of hope. However, Weathers' condition was critical. He was suffering from severe frostbite, hypothermia, and snow blindness. The camp, while offering shelter, was ill-equipped to handle medical emergencies, especially at such high altitudes. The following hours and days were a blur of pain and uncertainty for Weathers. His survival hung in a delicate balance. The storm continued to rage, making any immediate descent or rescue attempt impossible. The climbers at Camp 4 did what they could, but their resources were limited. Weathers, in his weakened state, faced the very real possibility of not making it off the mountain alive. The descent, a test of endurance and hope. The descent from Mount Everest, particularly from the death zone, is often more treacherous than the ascent. For Beck Weathers, this descent was not just a physical journey, but a profound test of endurance, hope, and the human spirit. Having miraculously survived the night after being left for dead, Weathers now faced the daunting task of descending from one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. Weathers' condition was grave. His frostbitten hands and face were stark reminders of the night's ordeal. His vision, though slightly improved, was still severely impaired. The task of descending the treacherous slopes of Everest, which under normal circumstances required immense skill and concentration, seemed an almost insurmountable challenge in his state. In the high-altitude environment of Everest, where every step requires a Herculean effort, Weathers began his descent. The camp members, aware of his critical condition, offered what help they could. But in the death zone, resources were scarce, and each climber was grappling with their own exhaustion and the effects of altitude. Despite these dire circumstances, a ray of hope emerged in the form of fellow climbers. Realizing Weathers' desperate situation, a few brave souls decided to assist him in his descent. This decision was not taken lightly. In the death zone, stopping to help another climber can put one's own life at risk. Yet, in an extraordinary display of solidarity and human compassion, they chose to aid Weathers. The descent was slow and perilous. Weathers, guided by his fellow climbers, navigated the treacherous terrain. Each step was a testament to their collective will to survive. The slopes of Everest are unforgiving, with hidden crevasses, unstable snow, and the ever-present risk of avalanches. In these conditions, even the most experienced climbers are at the mercy of the mountain. As they descended, the group faced numerous challenges. The high winds and cold were relentless, and the risk of frostbite and hypothermia was ever present. Weathers, in his weakened state, struggled with every step. The pain from his frostbitten limbs was excruciating, yet he persevered, driven by an unwavering desire to return to his family. The descent was not just a physical battle, but also a mental one. The psychological toll of such an ordeal is immense. Weathers and his rescuers had to contend not only with their physical injuries, but also with the mental exhaustion and the emotional impact of the tragedy that had unfolded. The mountain, in its indifferent majesty, continued to test their resolve. With each meter they descended, the air became slightly richer in oxygen, offering a small respite to their beleaguered bodies. Yet the danger was far from over. The descent through the Khumbu icefall, with its shifting ice towers and deep crevasses, was particularly hazardous. It was a labyrinth of ice and snow that required immense skill and concentration to navigate, especially for a climber in Weathers' condition. Throughout this harrowing descent, the spirit of camaraderie among the climbers was palpable. In the face of adversity, they showed remarkable unity and determination. This brotherhood, formed in the crucible of Everest's harsh environment, was a shining example of humanity's capacity for empathy and cooperation in the face of overwhelming odds. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the group reached the relative safety of the lower camps. This milestone was a significant achievement, but Weathers was still far from safe. His injuries were severe, and he urgently needed medical attention. The lower camps, while more hospitable than the death zone, were still rudimentary in terms of facilities. A more comprehensive medical intervention was necessary, and for that, Weathers had to be transported to a lower altitude. The decision was made to evacuate him by helicopter, a risky operation given the thin air and unpredictable weather of the Himalayas. The helicopter rescue, executed in such extreme conditions, was a testament to the extraordinary efforts of the rescue team and pilots. It was a daring and dangerous mission, but one that offered the only chance of survival for Weathers. Beck Weathers' descent from Everest was a journey of unimaginable hardship and extraordinary courage. It was a journey that tested the limits of human endurance and the strength of the human spirit. The assistance he received from his fellow climbers was not just a helping hand. It was a lifeline that saw him through one of the most challenging experiences of his life. The rescue, a turn of fate. Beck Weathers' journey on Mount Everest had been a grueling testament to human endurance, but his ultimate survival hinged on a miraculous rescue operation that defied the odds. After an arduous descent, Weathers was at the brink of death, his body ravaged by frostbite and exhaustion. What unfolded next was nothing short of extraordinary, a rare convergence of courage, skill, and a turn of fate. The rescue of Weathers began with a critical decision at Camp 2. Given his severe condition, it was clear that a rapid descent to lower altitudes for medical attention was essential. However, the typical evacuation method of a long and perilous trek was out of the question. In a bold move, a helicopter evacuation was proposed, a risky and unprecedented operation at such a high altitude on Everest. Enter Lieutenant Madden KC, a pilot with the Nepalese Army, whose bravery and flying skills became central to the rescue. Helicopter rescues at high altitudes are fraught with danger. The thin air at such heights offers little lift for helicopter blades, making it extremely challenging to maneuver. Additionally, the unpredictable weather and the rugged terrain of the Himalayas posed significant risks. But the situation was desperate, and the decision to attempt the rescue was a race against time. As Weathers lay in a precarious state, the rescue team prepared for the arrival of the helicopter. The tension was palpable. This operation was unprecedented, and its success was far from certain. The team at Camp 2 cleared a makeshift helipad, removing rocks and leveling snow, aware that even the slightest miscalculation could lead to disaster. The sound of the approaching helicopter broke the tense silence of the Himalayan morning. Lieutenant Madden KC, aware of the risks, skillfully maneuvered the chopper into the thin air of Camp 2. It was a breathtaking display of aviation skill and bravery. The helicopter, stripped of non-essential equipment to reduce weight, hovered precariously as Weathers was hurriedly loaded on board. The flight back to lower altitude was fraught with peril. The helicopter, carrying the weight of its precious cargo, had to navigate through unpredictable air currents and the treacherous topography of the Everest region. Lieutenant Madden KC's expertise was evident as he steered the helicopter through this hazardous journey, a feat that would later be recognized as one of the most daring rescues in the history of high-altitude mountaineering. The successful landing of the helicopter at a lower altitude was a moment of profound relief and triumph. Weathers was immediately transferred to a medical facility, where he received the critical care he desperately needed. The rescue, against all odds, had been successful, but the ordeal had left Weathers with life-altering injuries. The severe frostbite required the amputation of his right arm and parts of both feet, a sobering reminder of the brutal price he paid in his pursuit of Everest. The rescue of Beck Weathers stands as a powerful narrative of survival and human courage. It underscores the incredible risks associated with high-altitude mountaineering and the extraordinary measures required to save lives in such extreme conditions. The decision to undertake the helicopter rescue, the skill and bravery of Lieutenant Madan KC, and the collective efforts of the rescue team were pivotal in snatching Weathers from the jaws of death. Weathers' evacuation from Everest was more than a mere physical rescue. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the boundless capacity for hope in the face of overwhelming adversity. It highlighted the profound interdependence of climbers in the high mountains, where survival often hinges on the actions and decisions of others. The story of Weathers' rescue is not just a chronicle of individual survival. It is a reminder of our shared humanity and the extraordinary feats we are capable of achieving when we come together in the service of life. It is a narrative that resonates beyond the confines of mountaineering, speaking to the heart of what it means to face insurmountable odds and emerge victorious.